Feel safest when you are, pleasing others, staying small or staying silent. You might feel safe. That's how you survived your narcissistic mother, by shape shifting, by pleasing, by staying small, by staying silent. That's how you survive. Hey everyone, I hope everyone is doing good and taking good care of themselves. So today I'm going to talk about why narcissistic mothers are obsessed with control and they just don't care about connection. And before I get going, I would request you all to like, share, subscribe the channel, hit the notification bell so you guys are updated whenever we put out a new content. So before we dive deep, let us understand who these narcissistic mothers are. So a narcissistic mother sees her child not as an independent being but as an extension of herself. The child exists to serve a role, to mirror her, to validate her, or bolster her fragile self-image, or to enable her. Like an emotional toilet, punch bag, a doormat. A child is to serve the narcissistic mother and not the other way around. The child is to keep serving the mother and keep betraying himself or herself. Connection in a healthy sense requires mutuality, vulnerability, reciprocity. But in narcissistic families, narcissistic mother and child relationship, a narcissistic mother is incapable of genuine emotional reciprocity and all of the good things, that a healthy mother gives to her child. This narcissistic mother is incapable of, giving genuine emotional reciprocity, unconditional love. She is not designed to give all of that. Her primary drive is control, and it wears many masks, and that's what we are going to talk about in this lecture. There are 4 control mechanisms. There are 4 different ways or methods that these narcissistic mothers use to dominate their children. The first method is enmeshment. The child is not allowed to have a separate identity. Her emotions, her choices, and boundaries are consumed by the mother's needs. And this is what, Pia Melody, if you're familiar with her work, she calls this as boundary invasion, where the child is treated like a property and not a person. The other way how these narcissistic mothers, dominate, control their children is with guilt tripping. So the mother weaponizes guilt. After all I have done for you, blah, 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 blah. You are so ungrateful. You are disrespectful. You hardly care about me. And this basically, keeps the child emotionally indebted and obedient, even in adulthood. So they start this guilt tripping from an early childhood, when the child is young. And as a result of which, even when the child becomes an adult, he still feels indebted and obligated, and he or she is still obedient, towards his, narcissistic parent, in this case the narcissistic mother. The other way how these narcissistic mothers control and dominate their children is with comparison and triangulation. So in narcissistic families, siblings are pitted against each other. She did better, he was saying this, she loves me more than you, and all of those things. To tell you honestly, when you are raised in a narcissistic family, you are never, quite as good as, someone else. There's always a difference. Someone is always better than you, no matter how hard you try. And this is something that creates chronic insecurity and self-doubt. And the credit goes to our narcissistic parent, in this case our narcissistic mother. And the fourth way how these narcissistic mothers, dominate their children is with sabotage being disguised as protection. So the narcissistic mother might, undermine your choices while claiming to protect you. And when you seek independence, she creates crisis or guilt to reel you back in, to pull you back in. Yeah, again, this is a form of a covert control. And it feels like care, but it's really a leash. You feel as if you are caring for her. You feel as if you are helping her out, but in reality she's just reeling you back in. And all of it is under the guise of care and concern. I did this to protect you, I did this for your greater good. We know the drill. Now I would also like to talk briefly about the gendered expectations and the daughter dynamic. So narcissistic mothers often place impossible standards on daughters, rooted in gendered expectations. Yeah, so you are expected to be perfect, pretty, polite, and performative, but never too bold, too opinionated, or too free. Yeah, so you are allowed with limitations, you are allowed with boundaries, you are allowed with control. And we just see that we were allowed. We fail to see that we are being controlled and the boundary is being laid out and we are being pulled in. We are allowed to perform but not be too bold. We are allowed to perform but not be too opinionated. We are allowed to perform but not be too free and independent. And in reality, the daughter of narcissistic mothers are groomed to be an emotional caretaker, yeah, for their narcissistic mother. She becomes the mother's therapist, emotional spouse, or source of narcissistic supply. Carl Jung, describes this dynamic as mother projecting her unlived life onto the daughter, making her responsible for fulfilling all that the mother could not achieve. Yeah? And again, this doesn't breed anything healthy in the child, in the daughter. All what this breeds is resentment, rivalry, and deep emotional confusion. Now, let us also understand what are the impacts of narcissistic abuse by narcissistic mothers, on the daughters. I mean, what are the impacts on the survivor? Survivors of this dynamic often experience. I mean, these are just the common thing, we get to see with all the survivors of narcissistic abuse. But yes, when you are experiencing narcissistic abuse, in the family by your narcissistic parent, certain things are different. The first common thing, that survivors experience is, chronic self-doubt. Yeah, they are never sure about themselves. It's because gaslighting, all those emotional blackmails. These folks, these survivors also, suffer from, perfectionism. They're obsessed about, doing things perfectly, or else they'll be shamed, judged, and they'll be looked down upon, or they'll be, abandoned. So they outperform themselves, even at the cost of burning themselves on the inside. Yeah, even at the cost of, damaging themselves, or even if it's hurting, but still they want to be perfect. Yeah, perfectionism. The other impact that we get to see on the survivors of narcissistic mother is, guilt for asserting needs. So if you have needs, you feel guilty talking about it because she made you feel that your needs are not the important thing. Your needs are bad. My needs are more important. I brought you in this world to fulfill my needs and not your own need, because if you will fulfill your own need, I will label you as selfish. And the word selfish, the term and the label selfish child from your caregiver is a painful thing. It's like a dagger in your heart. It hurts. So the child does anything and everything to protect and preserve that relationship with his or her narcissistic parent. The other impact on the survivors who have survived narcissistic mother is, that these survivors, they find it difficult to trust other women because your primary caregiver, your mother, is abusing you, making your life hell. You see other women also the same way, and it becomes very difficult. If she can hurt me, that friend can hurt me, my girlfriend can hurt me, my wife can hurt me, my this friend can hurt me, my this colleague can hurt me. So this woman, this mother, she torments you to such an extent that you're literally scared of other women as well, whether you are a man or a woman. The other impact on the survivors that we get to see when you have survived a narcissistic mother is, fear of intimacy and vulnerability. So you are scared of being intimate and open and express your vulnerabilities, because every time you expressed your vulnerabilities, every time you tried being close, it was not reciprocated in the same manner. You were shamed, your vulnerabilities were used against you, it was used to guilt trip you, to manipulate you, to shame you, whatnot. So in general, you develop this fear for intimacy and vulnerability. You are like, let me not talk about these things, let me not get into these things, because last time when I checked in, it was shit. So now it's better that I remain checked out. And all of this is because your nervous system may be wired for performance. I mean, you were trained to only get into performance and not presence. And to tell you honestly, all this is because, you were wired, for performance and not presence. Yeah. You may feel safest when you are, pleasing others, staying small or staying silent. You might feel safe. That's how you survived your narcissistic mother, by shape shifting, by pleasing, by staying small, by staying silent. That's how you survive. So, these things feel safe. You feel safest when you are people pleasing. You feel safest when you're staying small, reducing yourself. You feel safe when you are staying silent. And to tell you honestly, these are not personality flaws. These are simple and pure trauma adaptations. Yes, it is your trauma adaptation. That's how you have survived. That's how you have sailed through all this while. So before I end this video, let me tell you something. Understanding that your mother's need for control was never love is really painful. It's excruciatingly painful, and it hurts. But to tell you honestly, it's also freeing. She couldn't connect with you because she couldn't tolerate your autonomy. She couldn't tolerate that light in you, and that's the reason she was never able to connect. She was never able to see you or hear you. And also, she is built differently. She's a separate individual. She was just the carrier or the egg donor. Yeah, so don't expect much from her. At this point in life, you are allowed to individuate. You are allowed to separate. You are allowed to think independently, feel independently, and live without guilt. Yeah, you don't have to live in fear, shrink, or reduce yourself. And to tell you honestly, connection is also possible. Yeah, but you can only connect with good people and have a good circle and connect with like-minded folk when you have developed this ability to reclaim your identity. Yeah, and how do you do that? With radical acceptance, with retraining yourself. I am not the version that she made me believe I was. I'm not. I'm different. Yeah. So yes, this was it. Thanks for being here, and if this resonated, consider subscribing the channel, and please explore the content that is out there on my channel, on narcissistic abuse and identity healing. And yes, please take care of yourself. Lots of love and blessings to all of you. Bye.